Hello, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ahmed Said. I'm the Executive Director of JPAL MENA at AUC. I'm also an Associate Professor at the American University in Cairo, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's seminar organized by JPAL MENA at AUC in collaboration with UNICEF Egypt. I would like to extend a special thanks to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Ahmed Daher, the Deputy Minister for Technological Development at the Ministry of Education and Technical Education in Egypt, Dr. Andreas Diparos, Assistant Professor at the University of California, Irvine, Mr. Shiraz Shakira, the Chief of Education at the UNICEF Egypt Country Office, and Ms. Hind Gilgil, Egypt's go-to-market consultant at Wadwani Foundation. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Your presence and expertise are invaluable to our discussion today. Today's seminar is the 8th installment in our Global Evidence for Egypt Spotlight. It's the 8th installment in our Global Evidence for Egypt Spotlight series. This series is a testament to our commitment to bridging global evidence with local policy needs. This partnership between JPAL MENA and UNICEF Egypt fosters a dialogue among Egyptian policymakers, development practitioners, and JPAL-affiliated professors around pertinent policy issues in Egypt. During each seminar, policymakers highlight a particular development priority in Egypt. JPAL affiliates frame the policy issue with a global perspective and offer a synthesis of evidence-informed insights for improving policy and program design from the database of randomized evaluations conducted by JPAL. In dialogue, the panel of policymakers, experts, and JPAL affiliates around group the evidence in the Egyptian context and together explore possible policy solutions to development challenges in Egypt. Our goals for today are twofold. Firstly, we aim to present some of the latest evidence from research in general and randomized evaluations in particular on how digital technology can impact learning outcomes. We are fortunate to have Professor Andreas Diparos with us, who will be walking us through this evidence. Secondly, we are here to foster an evidence-informed policy dialogue, bringing together development practitioners and experts working in Egypt's education sector. This dialogue is crucial for aligning Egypt's policy priorities with insights drawn from the global evidence base. This is timely, given that Egypt has embarked on a comprehensive and ambitious education reform program aimed at improving the quality and effectiveness of its education system. As expected with reforms of this type and scale, the Egyptian government faces multifaceted challenges. Those include inadequate school infrastructure, unequal access to technology, budget constraints, and a shortage of qualified teachers. While these challenges are significant, they also present opportunities for innovation and transformation. Today, we will explore whether digital technology can serve as a remedy for these educational challenges. In our rapidly digitalizing world, it's imperative to understand how we can effectively leverage educational technology, or in simple terms, EdTech, to enhance what's often referred to as the instructional core, which is like the critical interaction and nexus between teachers, students, and instructional materials. EdTech holds the promise of revolutionizing this core by providing innovative tools that can facilitate personalized learning, foster interactive and engaging instructional methods, and bridge gaps in educational access and quality. By integrating digital resources into traditional teaching practices, we can create more dynamic and responsive educational environment that cater to diverse student needs and learning styles. At JPAL, we recognize the crucial role of our partners in ministries and NGOs. They are the forefront of identifying core issues, designing effective programs, and ultimately enhancing human well-being and development outcomes. Through the Global Evidence for Egypt seminar series, we aim to assist the Egyptian government and NGO sector by providing evidence-based insights and ideas to enhance the policy effectiveness. This seminar focuses on addressing two pivotal questions. First, what are the most urgent educational priorities that the government faces, and what efforts are currently being made to address them? Second, how can JPAL's extensive knowledge on this issue be utilized to craft more effective policies and programs? Our mission at JPAL is to reduce poverty by ensuring that policy is informed by rigorous evidence. This seminar series is an important anchor of our mandate to disseminate what we know so it can help inform program and policy designs led by government and supported by NGOs and international organizations. To achieve this, we draw on a rich body of global evidence. We have conducted more than 2,200 impact evaluations worldwide since 2003, each for which is a partnership between researchers in the JPAL network and governments or NGOs. These evaluations have influenced policy design and reached 600 million lives through the scale-ups of evidence-based programs. The research at JPAL is led by a network of affiliated professors and invited researchers, one of whom is Andreas, whom we are delighted to welcome in Cairo today. This network of researchers employ randomized evaluations as a powerful tool to answer critical questions in the fight against poverty. In recognition of the significant impact of this research, our founders, Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Doflo, along with JPAL long-term affiliated professor Michael Kramer, were awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2019. I would like to thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to the insightful discussions and collaborations that will emerge from this event. Together, we can harness the powers of technology to transform education in Egypt, making strides towards a more equitable and effective education system for all. Now, I would be delighted to invite Dr. Samer Atallah to the podium to deliver his introductory remarks. Professor Atallah is the Associate Dean of the School of Business at AUC. He has been an Associate Professor of Economics at the School of Business since 2011. Dr. Atallah is a seasoned researcher with interests in political economy and development economics. His research also covers game theory applications on the political economy of democratization and quantitative analysis of election results. He earned his PhD and master's in economics from McGill University and also holds a master in engineering from the University of California at Berkeley. He's a research fellow at the Economic Research Forum in Egypt, a member of the Canadian Economic Association and the Middle East Economic Association. Dr. Atallah, the podium is yours.
Good afternoon. Very warm welcome, literally very warm welcome. Thank you, Ahmed, for the introduction. And one of the evidence of how digital this world is, I have my notes on my phone. So welcome to the AUC Tahrir campus. Welcome to this very lovely historical room, the Oriental Hall, that witnessed the talks and speeches of seasoned and experienced educational experts that came here and spoke about the educational reform, the importance of education, how do we proceed about education, and the challenges that face a country like Egypt in its developmental challenge, particularly at the core of these developmental challenges, the issue of education. I want to thank Ahmed again, and I want to thank the JPAL team for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and given that this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think it's at the cornerstone of any discussion about making a betterment of the country that we live in. I'm here representing the AUC School of Business, which hosts the JPAL MENA Center. Our vision and mission at the AUC School of Business is to be the knowledge hub of the region. We want to provide knowledge about the region from a global perspective. And actually the series, the Global Evidence for Egypt, is one of the things that kind of help us fulfill this vision and mission. It's a bridging of the global evidence that is out there in the world about the region, how we can learn from the knowledge that is out there, how we can apply the knowledge that is out there to the challenges and opportunities for the region. Actually, the GE4E is, since I'm quite fascinated with acronyms, this is one of the very few acronyms that I actually appreciate, and I think it kind of fulfills our mission as the AUC School of Business. So, as I said, today's discussion is of utmost importance. As Ahmed indicated, and also Ahmed is an economist, it's very rare that we as economists agree collectively on policy priorities and policy directions, but I bet you if you ask 100 economists to list 5 priorities or 5 challenges that face Egypt, I bet you that all of them will agree that they will put on their list of 5 challenges the education, its accessibility, its quality, and its dissemination. So it is really something that, and I think they will agree on, if you ask them yesterday, if you ask them today, if you ask them tomorrow, it is really, in my view, people from left, right, and center would put this at the forefront of the national agenda of Egypt and its economy. In the past decades, so I will pretend that I'm young, but I can claim that I've seen a lot of policy priorities moving around in the past decades. We've seen policy priorities in the education move around and juggle around in the what I call the holy trinity of education, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the curriculum, or whether it's the infrastructure. In some years, during the Mubarak era, the issue of infrastructure took the forefront in order to reduce the class density and allow more accessibility. Later on, the issue of the teacher and how to enhance the skills of the teacher. And most recently, in the past few years, the issue of curriculum took the forefront with the development and the revamp from the K to 12 curriculum and how to improve it and so on and so forth. But I would claim that, at least in my view, my personal view, I'm not representing anyone here, I'm representing myself, that a holistic approach to education has been lacking, at least in the policy of Egypt. And then came digital transformation, and it took the forefront prior to the COVID pandemic. It obviously took the priority during the pandemic, and as like anything else, it's changed almost every aspect in our life, and education is no exception. And it's fascinating how, and I'm happy to see the Deputy Minister, Mr. Ahmed Taher, here and I'm looking forward to these remarks in the panel. It is really fascinating how digital transformation in a lot of aspects in our life can change everything in our lives. And I think, in my personal view, is that a digitally enabled educational experience is a game changer, literally, with a wide array of opportunities. Yet, what I sense is that policymakers are targeting digital transformation education as an outcome at the end, not really as an enabler to the educational outcome, for multiple things, to access an infinite spectrum of resources, to add more equitable access to education. One of the quote-unquote pandemics or issues that I have with the educational system in Egypt, and I think a lot of people in this room would agree with me, is the equitable access across gender lines, the equitable access across urban and regional. And I think the digital and digitally enabled educational experience can have the opportunity to reduce this gap if correctly used and correctly designed. All above this, obviously the accessibility to an infinite spectrum of knowledge and information about that. And I think this is the part that we need to work on here in Egypt. I think we really need to look at the digitally enabled educational experience as an enabler to reach outcomes that we decide on, outcomes that we want to achieve in terms of the quality, in terms of the access of education. We've seen that in Egypt, the government of Egypt had made significant investment in digital learning technologies. And it's important for us, and I hope we'll hear that today in today's discussion, to discuss how these return on these investments and what are their effective outcomes. A smooth integration of digital learning requires careful planning, which goes beyond providing inputs such as education infrastructure or internet or material resources. And we need to think of a well-balanced approach to improve learning outcomes that integrates both the short-term and long-term policy strategy. We must ask ourselves, as Ahmed indicated, questions how we can effectively secure necessary resources while optimizing the use to achieve best possible outcomes. And this is not just, today we're hearing about education, but I think I'm going to put my hat again on Associate Dean, and I think this is a common theme in all the conversations we have in business education with our partners, whether corporate partners or government, when it comes to digital transformation. It should be really not just the objective. It's not about having fancy computers and laptops and fast internet, but what does the digital platform do to the outcome and process that you want to achieve? I always use the example, some of you in the room have seen the years in Egypt where the passport of Egypt was an analog passport. And once it became transformed into a digital, well-read, digitally read passport, we still fill the paper document that by hand, and it still is being collected, even though it became a completely redundant process to a digitally read passport. So that's my really worry when it comes to a digital transformation, that we invest a lot in infrastructure without really improving the processes and the outcomes. I want to finish by thanking UNICEF. This is a partnership that has really helped us since the inception of JPAL MENA to disseminate world-class knowledge and evidence from other parts of the world to the Egyptian policymakers, to the people who are concerned about the challenges and opportunities that face Egypt. It is really a very important piece of activity that we do here. I think it's very evident that we do not need to reinvent the wheel. There is a lot of evidence that is scientifically based elsewhere in the world. The challenges of the developing worlds are almost same across the board, and it's very constructive to really share this evidence. I want to thank UNICEF for the support of that. I want to thank the team of JPAL that has been tirelessly working in this series. It's the 8th now, so congratulations on your efforts. I hope there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samir. I would like to invite now Mr. Liban Hussein, Chief of Social Policy and Child Right Monitoring at UNICEF Egypt, to the podium. Mr. Hussein has more than 25 years of experience working with UN organizations in humanitarian and development settings. His areas of expertise include social protection, public finance for children, decentralization, and local governance. Before joining UNICEF Egypt, he served as the Social Policy Manager and Deputy Representative in UNICEF Oman, where he led the UNICEF support in the National Social Protection Reform, resulting in the establishment of a comprehensive and integrated social protection system in the country. He also held the position of Social Policy Specialist at UNICEF Somalia and UNICEF Iraq. Additionally, he served as the head of the UN Habitat Office in Northwest Somalia and the team leader for the UN Joint Program on Local Governance and Decentralized Service Delivery on behalf of 5 UN organizations. Mr. Hussein, the podium is yours.
So, good afternoon. So, distinguished colleagues, I'm delighted to participate in today's seminar on digital learning and insight on integrating education technology in teaching. In today's education landscape, as we all know, digital learning plays a critical role in providing children with essential skills and knowledge. UNICEF is proud to be part of this ongoing and fruitful partnership with JPAL, which has been ongoing since 2019. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank JPAL for all the effort in promoting evidence-based policy making. This seminar is part of a series aimed at generating evidence for Egypt to facilitate dialogue among policymakers, development practitioners, and affiliated JPAL professors on relevant policy issues impacting children and youth. Similar to many other countries, Egypt has a high number of students enrolled in schools, but many of them require additional support to master basic readings and math skills. This underscores the importance of investing more in education to reduce learning poverty in primary schools, consequently leading to improved learning outcomes. At UNICEF, we are committed to working with the Ministry of Education to achieve its vision to transform education in line with the national vision objectives, in which digital learning is an integral part, to provide children and youth with quality, equitable, and relevant learning opportunities. We believe this will enhance human capital accumulation, which will lead to long-term benefits, improving labor market productivity and economic growth. The evidence to be presented today from the randomized controlled trials examine the varying learning outcomes resulting from integration of education technologies globally, some of which have yielded staggering results. I look forward to exploring the catalyzing factors identified from the global evidence that would enable investment in education to yield the desired outcomes and achieve impactful results. I would like to extend my appreciation to the government partners and development practitioners who are contributing their time, knowledge, and technical expertise to enhance evidence-based policy making that aims to improve learning outcomes for our children. I would like to specifically thank Dr. Ahmed Daher, Deputy Minister for Technological Development, Dr. Ahmed Daher, Executive Director of JPAL, MENA, Professor Andres Barros, Mr. Shiraz Shakira, our Chief of Education, for their participation in the upcoming panel and for the efforts and passion they put on this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Liban. Before I introduce Dr. Andreas Tiparos, I would like to set the stage for this presentation by giving you like a flavor and very quick overview of some of local and global challenges in education and how we at JPAL go through addressing these challenges. So yeah, I'll be covering the first 2 points very quickly, and then just like to give the floor to Andreas to go through the global evidence for educational technologies. So next, please. This doesn't work. It works. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, so as we all know, that being in school doesn't mean that children are learning, unfortunately. Like, recently there has been a massive increase in the enrollment rates globally across countries, both advanced and developing countries. However, this is not necessarily translated into better education outcomes, mainly because of the learning poverty, or what we call as learning poverty, which is mainly like the share of children who cannot read a simple text with comprehension by age 10. So this is kind of like, an indication for a problem with the education system in which children enroll at school, but actually like, the quality of education they're receiving is not sufficient. This has been exacerbated during the COVID time in 2019, when a lot of these children, particularly those who are from globally, actually, like, in advanced and developing countries, were just receiving education at home. And if your parents cannot support you sufficiently because you are coming from low socioeconomic background or so, then you are suffering even more. So back in the time, 57% in low and middle income countries of the children from low and middle income countries are suffering from learning poverty, and 86% is the percentage of those who are struggling in sub-Saharan Africa. So how is the situation in Egypt? In Egypt, actually, like, Egypt is not an exception in this regard. Most students are enrolled in school. Egypt has been very successful in that. So only 1% of primary school-age children are not enrolled in school. But learning poverty is still high. So we have 70% of children in the country at late primary age are not proficient in reading. Also, most students do not reach minimum proficiency level. Large-scale learning assessment of students in Egypt indicate that 69% do not achieve the minimum proficiency level, or what's called as an abbreviation MPL, at the end of the primary school, proxied by data from grade 4 in 2016. So how exactly we can deal scientifically with this? What exactly JPAL can do here to help address this issue? JPAL is a global research center that focuses mainly on rigorous scientific evidence using this technique that's called randomized evaluations or randomized controlled trials. This technique takes a scientific approach to tackling poverty, and the idea is very simple and intuitive and straightforward. So, and we borrowed this actually from the medical sciences, so we haven't invented it. The idea of randomized controlled trials indicates, or goes in the direction of having individuals who are eligible for a certain program. Think, for example, about students who are eligible for a certain new curriculum, and then you simply randomize those children into two groups, treatment and control group. This randomization makes you start exactly at the same level. So because you have split the two groups randomly, you are 100% very confident that the characteristics of those people before starting this experiment are exactly the same. Not only on observable characteristics that we can observe, but also on the unobservable characteristics, like motivation level, for example, right? The only difference between the two groups would be one of them receiving the intervention, the curriculum in this case, or the training, or the extra activities, and the other one will not be receiving that. And then you would be taking a measure on your outcome, outcomes of interest towards the end, and any difference there would be traced back to the fact that this is the causal impact of the intervention. This is the simplest format of this, but it can also get a bit more complicated if you want to study several arms. You can try different interventions, for example, different curriculums, different techniques of teaching, and comparing those against each other and against the control group. So you can know exactly what works and what doesn't work and in which context. So actually, this could enable you also to answer the question of why things do not work and not only what's working and what's not working. I'll leave it here and give now the floor to Andreas. Let me just introduce you properly. So, Andreas Di Paros is an assistant professor at the University of California, Irvine School of Education, and by courtesy, the Department of Economics. Andreas' research specializes in program evaluation and evidence-based education policy in less developed countries. Before joining the University of California, Irvine, he was a postdoc associate at MIT, Department of Economics, where he also worked with JPAL, or Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab. Andy, welcome again to Cairo. Thank you so much for making the effort and coming all the way from the US. The floor is yours.
I'm going to start out by saying thank you. Thank you to the representation from the ministry. Thank you to UNICEF, and thank you to my colleagues at JPAL. Thank you for being here, sitting here and discussing this important topic with us and spending time with us today. Personally, I've been working with JPAL a long time, and I want to share a little bit more about just what we do at JPAL. We don't just run these experiments. We also try to communicate the results of these experiments in a way that is a little bit more accessible than the kind of stuff that I usually produce as a researcher. What I usually produce as a researcher is a very dense, very long research paper, such that a single study has sometimes 100 pages of report. So if I send this to the ministry, I probably assume that there's going to be very little appetite to reading through my dense and long articles. So what JPAL does is it also tries to summarize and translate some of these findings that come out of these many different experiments that JPAL has run in the past. So in education, in EdTech, while we have prepared for you a seminar brief where we try to do that, I also want to point to the evidence review that JPAL has on its website, which is fairly recent, which summarizes the evidence that we have, credible evidence on whether technology transformed education for the better, summarizing from a large meta-analysis of many different studies what the different effects were of different interventions, right? So this takes just one of my studies as one little data point, then takes that causal effect that was detected in my study that I just ran, but then looks at thousands of other studies and filters them for, are they credible, are they producing causal effect, and if so, how can we learn from all these different findings, and then how can we present it in a way that is accessible? I think most importantly, how can we distill this in a way that can be read on 4 or 5 pages and is hopefully understandable, right? So very much encourage you to look at this publication, but this is also background for what I'm presenting today. So what I'm presenting today on what we know about educational technology rests on one of these very large actually 3 of these very large, what are called meta-analyses, both in EdTech, but more broadly also a meta-analysis about what we know about interventions in less developed countries in education more broadly. Right? So, all right, okay, let's try it again. Okay, great. So certainly if you've come here today, you're interested in, let's try this for now. Certainly if you come here today, you're interested in educational technology, but you're certainly not alone in this, right? So there's widespread excitement about technology. If you look at just capital investment in this, if you look at search patterns on Google, everybody after the COVID pandemic has known just like the interest in educational technologies is through the roof, right? More recently, after the pandemic, this coincided with the development of ChatGPT and large language models, and everybody right now is talking about how these large language models are likely going to be disrupt not just education, but other industries worldwide. So there is huge excitement around this. Right? But let me tell you one thing. From these reviews that we know about educational technology, we know that merely providing and procuring technology infrastructure alone is often ineffective. So this is not the first time that people have become excited about educational technology. So here I'm showing you one of the examples in the past, which was an initiative called One Laptop Per Child, where actually researchers like myself got very excited and went out to policymakers and went out and told them, hey, we have a great solution for you. We developed a $100 laptop. All we need to do is provide a $100 laptop to everybody in the classroom, and as soon as everybody has a laptop, everybody is going to learn, right? We're bypassing teachers, whatnot, like it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. What happened? Nothing in terms of child learning, right? Certainly there were a lot of nice photo ops like this one, right? Certainly, actually laptops arrived in schools, which is great, right? But did children learn more? No, right? And in these reviews that I just mentioned, we see this over and over again. Interventions that merely focus on buying stuff have zero impact on child learning. And child learning is what we should be caring about. It's not about buying that laptop, showing that I installed something, showing that I provided access to some kind of technology. No, it is about child learning, and in terms of child learning, these initiatives that largely focus on infrastructure have produced 0 on average. Right? Even though that's often the great excitement around like doing things, buying things, getting stuff, procuring technology, on average, these interventions produce a big 0. Right? EdTech can also disrupt and be inferior to in-person instruction. So we have good evidence from the pandemic. We also have from pre-pandemic information, good evidence on actually technology-based education being inferior to in-person instruction. And you probably noticed that if you have some personal evidence or anecdotes to that about the pandemic, certainly you know about this, but also if you have good hard evidence on this, right? Another thing that I wanted to point out is that just providing access to it does not translate into usage. Right? What I'm showing you here is a very amazing educational technology platform that is available to you right now as you're sitting in this room, which is edX. edX, probably a lot of you in this room have signed up to edX at some point. edX is a platform that colleagues of mine at MIT and Harvard put online with the idea of saying, I am providing free access to this great education that people get at Harvard and MIT. If you want to get that education, here, go for it. It's free. Just all you need to do is sign up. Right? What I'm showing you here is enrollment patterns in edX that is put together. This is a science publication that's put together by one of the main researchers who studies the data behind edX. So if you have signed up to edX, you're probably in this plot, right? What this shows you is that there's great interest in enrolling in these courses. So just like myself, I'm signing up and it's like, cool, I'm gonna get this class and I'm going to enroll in it, right? So these are like where these lines start on the left. What you see at the bottom is the percentage of people who actually finish a class, right? And that's including myself, right? Who are like, of course I'm gonna take this great class, but then never finish, right? So that is part of the story that if you don't provide structure, if you don't integrate technology in curriculum and the educational system, and if you don't mandate usage, why would you even want to see any effect of that anyways, right? I don't even need to go to JPAL and run a fancy evaluation or do any of this experimenting of assigning people into treatment and control. If I just know from pure usage data that those who are in just the treatment group sign up but then never use that educational technology or just sign up and never finish, why would you expect that there's going to be any improvement on learning, right? So that's something where even before running an evaluation, I just highly encourage to look at that data and just see whether, for example, in a set of 100 schools that you've been working with, whether after 5 months, there is sustained usage of that. What's the percentage of kids who are still using that, whatever educational technology that you provided, and can be anything, is still being accessed by, whether it's, in this case, students, or if the example is about teachers using technology, whether teachers are actually using that, right? Maybe there's a technological issue, maybe stuff has broken, but maybe there is another issue about uptake and people are just not incentivized to use that. Whatever it is, right? You should have access to this data. That's the beauty of technology. You will be able to see whether people are using this, right? And very often, technology is just being provided, it's just given out there, it's uploaded on a website or just provided somewhere, allowing people to access it, but then usage patterns or completion patterns look exactly like that, right? As I said, governments have the power to publish this, and as they partner with organizations and as they procure services, they also have the chance to ask for this kind of stuff, right? Who owns the data and who gets access to that usage data is something that governments can request and require for whoever the technology partner is to provide. If a technology partner wants to come in, a government can require, for example, that the usage data is being given to the government. Right? That all that backend data is easily accessible to the government. Or, for example, that in procurement decisions, partners have to show that they have produced sustained usage in a set of pilot schools. Right? Highly encourage that. We don't need a JPAL study again to know that this is likely to not produce child learning if nobody is using it, if whatever the technology platform is. Right? I told you I'd be summarizing research not just from the technology area, but I also just look more broadly in terms of specific educational interventions that are highly likely to improve student learning. Because that's the vision we want to take. We don't want to look at just technology as a means by itself. We want to see how technology can come in to help bring about solutions that are great buys for educational policymakers to improve student learning. So this actually comes from another review that looked at interventions very broadly. And this is actually a review that also was financed by UNICEF, but is in collaboration with the World Bank and esteemed experts and expert panel that reviewed thousands of studies and then picked out intervention groups that have proven to improve foundational learning among students, right? Among those, they have identified 3, which they call great buys to improve student learning. And as I just mentioned before, there's many others that produce some learning, and there is also something like just buying stuff, like buying laptops, that rank very, very, very low in this, right? So let me summarize these 3 for you. One of these interventions is about providing information on the benefits, costs, and quality of education. That's one family of group of things that you can do. This is, for example, providing parents with information about the benefits of education or about what's going on in their child's school. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Right? Another group of intervention is about helping teachers teach and providing them with structured pedagogy as they teach in their classroom. So a package that includes something like structured lesson plans, learning materials, and ongoing teacher support. Right? And the third group of interventions is all group interventions that focus around targeting the instruction by learning level, not by student grade. Right? What I mean with that is, like, if you're a 4th grader, but you cannot recognize letters, or you can't recognize numbers, then teaching what is usually the 4th grade curriculum doesn't make any sense, right? Because already a 4th grade curriculum is way above the heads of these children, right? So this third group of interventions is sometimes called teaching at the right level. Sometimes it's called targeted remediation. It's all around this, like, how can we differentiate the instruction and level the instruction such that the level is at the child's level, not depending on what a child can do and know, not based on whatever the child is enrolled in. Right? So I'm going to speak about these 3. And for each of these, I wanted to discuss a little bit about how technology can come in to bring about these groups of each of these 3 interventions, right? And note here, right? None of these require that we use technology, right? Let's discuss a little bit about whether and how technology can be good at bringing about some of these, right? But note here how suddenly technology becomes a means, right? It's about, we have a final goal, which is about child learning. We have an intervention that we're confident in and that we're excited about, where we're very confident that this intervention is going to improve child learning. And then we're bringing in educational technology and discussing whether and how that technology can come in to bring about that change, right? It's not about technology just for the sake of, here is a laptop, right? It's about, like, how can technology bring about this intervention, right? So let's start by this first great buy, which is around providing information on the benefits, costs, and quality of education, right? So these are about giving parents and students information about the educational performance. And that often increases parental engagement, student effort, and both of these things combined improve child learning. Right? This is usually a low-cost intervention. Actually, when you look at impacts, these kind of innovations have very low impacts. Often they have a 0, right? But they're great because they're highly cost-effective. Right? So this is worthwhile doing because it's just so cheap. Right? Especially if you use technology for this. You could send a letter and not use technology for this, but technology is really good at this, right? And even low-tech technology is good at that. With low-tech, I mean something like a text message, right? You don't need to be on a computer for this, right? You don't need to purchase anything for this. All you need to know is a person's phone number, right? And you can text that parent and provide information. And with that low-cost information, even though it might not transform education, it's worthwhile doing, right? Just to provide 2 examples of that of 2 studies of JPEL affiliates in the US. Peter Berkman and Eric Chan, for example, ran a study that was all about messaging parents and sending them alerts over text if children reduced, when they, about the children's performance. and that increased class attendance, reduced course failure, and improved in-class exam scores. And note here, it didn't improve standardized test scores more broadly. So again, this is not like the magic that you can think of, right? But again, these are kind of interventions that are worth doing because they're so cheap. In Chile, where I actually started working with JPAL by coincidence, that was the first place I worked at JPAL in Chile. Colleagues of mine in Chile, together with the IDB, ran a study that provided information to parents. Again, very simple messaging, and that even improves student learning, right? So what you can think about in the Egyptian context is like, what kind of information can I provide to parents about, for example, attendance or about child learning in school? And often what we see with these kind of interventions is that parents, for example, become more engaged, or they know when a child is not attending school, right? Interestingly, also what these studies show is that those parents who are most misinformed are the parents of these children who are, for example, most likely to drop out. So it's a win-win. It's like really these parents who really need it are the ones that where this is most important, right? So that's really nice. Right? Let me go to that second great buy. The second great buy is about structured pedagogy, so about providing these guidelines or help for teachers to give guidance with what to do in a given class, right? And note again, you can do this, and actually some of the most successful programs here do this without technology, right? But you can use a tablet and provide the information with a tablet. Fine, right? You can do that, but I wanted to highlight, we know that this is highly successful. Then for you, it's a decision to take, is it easier and better for me to roll this program with a tablet or without, right? Both of these two parts come with its challenges, but then that's going to be the decision to take, right? Again, so not to say much more about this, but just to give you one of the examples. One of the examples is Kenya and the Tusome program that includes these structured guides for teachers. Again, it was run both with tablets or without tablets, but in Kenya, in reading, for example, the structured pedagogy programs increased learning by something like doubling the learning that you see over the course of a year. Right? So highly successful. Again, this is an area where we know it works and where technology can play a role. It doesn't have to, but it can. Right? Finally, let me talk a little bit about this area around targeting instruction by learning level not great. Right? Well known as teaching at the right level. Right? Teaching at the right level, I work with teaching at the right level. I'm the main researcher evaluating teaching at the right level in Zambia right now, and actually we're in data collection right now, so I'm excited about that. I was in Zambia earlier. When you look at teaching at the right level, Africa, for example, their program doesn't use any technology. There's no technology involved because you can do ability-based grouping in your classrooms, right? You don't need technology for that, right? But I can show you two types of technology interventions that basically try to do the same thing, right? What do I need to do? I need to diagnose where a child is at through some kind of diagnostic assessment, and then level the instruction through, for example, a computer adaptive learning software. Right? That's something that computers are really good at, right? If you are in a classroom with 50 students and they're at 5 different grade levels, good luck differentiating your instruction to that, right? TAL Africa has done a great job at doing that through these ability-based groups, but like doing it actually for every single student, right? It's such a hard thing, so computers are great at that. Like figuring out where every student is at and then differentiating the instructions, computers are great. And therefore, computer adaptive learning softwares have become one of these highly productive and highly impactful interventions. Right? One of them is MindSpark. One platform that I've been working on in India, and we have good evidence on MindSpark being one of these computer adaptive learning softwares, for example, that improves student learning. So both evaluated in an after-school setting. This is one version of MindSpark. So this is part of private tuition, which I know is very common here, but is also very common in India. And this was provided in an after-school setting, but then also still successful in a school setting, right? So mandating that students use this as part of their usual math periods, students being taken to a computer lab instead, or you can think about taking other free periods during the school day and then using MindSpark during these periods, right? And what MindSpark does is literally what I just mentioned, trying to figure out with a diagnostic test at the beginning where a student is at, and then leveling the instruction. Right? Another way of providing targeted remediation for students is one-on-one tutoring. Right? One-on-one tutoring, again, is super hard to do if you want to do that without technology, but through both combinations of text messaging and one-on-one phone calls, during the pandemic, we've seen some programs that work really well with that. Right? And one of the examples that I wanted to show is what's now being branded as Connect Ed, and that has been evaluated in 5 different countries during the pandemic. And that consists of, as I mentioned, text messages that go to students, but then also one-on-one tutoring. And at least on the skills that this intervention targeted, which was basic foundational skills in math, this program has been highly successful in improving those skills. Right? So summing up, I want to stop here and not talk much longer. But again, procuring hardware, buying stuff is not a guaranteed path to improved learning. And improved learning is what we care about. We don't care about the stuff we buy. We don't care about seeing that picture of somebody having a smart board or having a laptop. No, right? It's all about improved child learning, and programs that have focused on infrastructure procurement have throughout produced very, very little in terms of child learning. Right? So the key lies really in using EdTech to promote concrete strategies that improve student learning. Right? They can be around information provision, they can be around providing structured pedagogy, they can be around providing targeted remediation or teaching at the right level. Right? These strategies don't necessarily require technology, but technology is sometimes really, really good at doing this. Right? And we just discussed a little bit of that, but I'm happy to discuss more on the panel. All of these are learning technologies, right? And whether we want to use some kind of digital technology is something that's possible, but just because we can do it digital doesn't mean that we have to, right? If you do use digital for this learning technology, you better show me that this is improving learning, right? And EdTech is, at the same time, and I want to mention this again, really well positioned to show you that people are actually engaging with it. You have a lot of backend data. Oftentimes we don't know what's going on in schools, so it's beautiful that we know whether educational technology products are being used, right? But the key here is in demanding these kind of data and looking at them and making them part of the procurement, right? So that you're not just buying something because it looks shiny or because somebody tells you, wow, this is cool, I can personalize. No, right? I want you to show me that this product that you're trying to sell me at the first place has been showing consistent usage, right? Then once you show me that this is something that produces consistent usage, right, then let's go to our friends at JPL and figure out whether this is indeed improving student learning. And it's as easy as taking something like 200 schools at that sweet spot after piloting and after we figured out all these kinks and everything about how to keep usage high, to still check ourselves to see whether there is that positive impact on child learning when we compare, let's say, 100 schools assigned to receive an educational technology product for, let's say, for a year versus 100 schools that don't receive it. Right? Cool, I gotta stop here. And again, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Andy. This was very insightful and interesting. I very much like the idea of the 3 main areas where technology can play a role, where we can have the information provision and as a low-cost strategy to improve learning outcomes. Also focusing on teachers and structural pedagogy. This is also a very important area where technology can play a role, and also teaching at the right level and the different techniques that technology can play in this sphere. Building on this, I think we're all set now to start our panel discussion. And before getting into that, I would like to take a minute to introduce our distinguished panelists. Dr. Ahmed Daher, Ms. Hind Gilgil and Mr. Shiraz Shakira. I'll be starting with Dr. Ahmed Daher, who's currently the Deputy Minister for Technological Development at the Ministry of Education and Technical Education in Egypt. He's also the founder of the Blockchain Egypt initiative and has served as ICT advisor to the Minister of Education since 2019. With over 15 years of business experience, Dr. Daher has worked with several major institutions such as Siemens Egypt, Intel, IBM, Microsoft, and Oracle, specializing in e-government projects, cloud computing, e-learning, and educational technologies. He's a member of the Open Data Center Alliance and has been involved in setting cloud computing standards for the Egyptian government. Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll move to Mr. Mr. Shiraz Shakira, who's the Chief of Education in the UNICEF Egypt Country Office. Mr. Shakira just moved to Cairo from the UNICEF last year, the headquarters in New York, where he led global efforts on gender equality, girls' education, out-of-school children, and ending violence in schools. Previously, Mr. Shakira has led work on youth skills development, accelerating foundational learning, curriculum and assessment reform, and harnessing digital technology for learning across Africa, India, and the UK. Mr. Shakira, thank you so much for being with us today. Last but definitely not least, Ms. Hind Gilgil is the Egypt's go-to-market consultant at Wadwani Foundation. So she's like an educator, and she holds a master's degree in education, public policy, and equity from the University of Glasgow in the UK, and a certificate of professional certified trainer from the American University in Cairo. She has extensive experience with multiple high-profile posts publicly and privately, including being head of educational excellence at Noon Academy. Prior to that, she was appointed advisor for national projects and teachers affairs to the Ministry of Education and Technical Education. She also held the position of head of business development of the Innovation Hub at the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. Ms. Gilgil, thank you so much for being with us today. Okay, so before getting started, maybe we can give each of our distinguished panels like 3 to 5 minutes to give their reflections on what Andy just talked about and the topic, the theme of EdTech today. And we can get started with Dr. Ahmed Daher.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and thank you for the invitation for attending this panel. And thank you for the effort that's being done doing this, trying to articulate the essence of the education technology in the region with taking some examples. I do agree with you that technology is like a double-faced things up, that if you use it in a way, it could make more problems in this ecosystem. And the cost will go for nothing, actually. But in the policy part, there is a lot of things need to be done. As you said, that we need to do a lot of things, a lot of aspects, a lot of dimensions, how to use technology in the mainstream or trying to propose the technology, how to use it. So the point is not the technology from my insight. It's about defining what's the problems and what's the right solutions. And if technology could help in this, we could use it in a wise and a smart way. I'm not going to take this round of talking about what we did in Egypt. My comments on the, I like actually the methodology because it's an effective methodology. But I should warn that when you are in a government position and you are responsible for students in the stream from K to 12, and when talking about numbers in Egypt, we have diversities, we have big numbers. So, and it's very important for you just to try to to help the students right now. You don't have time to experiment. You don't have time to do it in the fancy research way. You are urged just to get the student from grade 1 to 2 and make sure that the parents are aligned to the same part. This is like the pressure and the culture pressure that we always from a government perspective. So this means that we need a policy that is agile and resilient in a way that we could measure in a very effective way and try to adjust the policy in the same time. I'll stick to this part, Ahmed, and my comments in this specific part, I'll show it in the second round, because I've been inspired by the talks for Professor Andreas about trying to show what we have in Egypt. So it happened that using technology, I have a presentation that I push it right away. I'm not prepared. So this presentation that I'm trying to put, I'll take some slides of trying to just present what we have in Egypt. So I'll let my colleagues just then and come back to what we have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. I think we can move to Mr. Shakira. If you have any comments, reflections on what has been discussed so far, that would be great.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. UNICEF is really happy to be partnering with JPAL on this mission around bringing evidence to partners here in Egypt. And I think what we're achieving here is a few things, not only the core matter of trying to grapple with some very interesting issues around technology and learning, but also just having a interesting and considered discussion about evidence. And I think there's something really positive about that as well. Maybe I'll also keep my reflections to begin with just quite short, because I have a lot of reflections, right? I'm grappling with some of the ideas that Dr. Andreas has presented, and I've engaged with some of his work before. It presents a lot of interesting insights, and I think, Dr. Daher, you actually point to perhaps the starting kind of paradox, actually, which is that let me step back a second. What is UNICEF, myself as head of education for the UNICEF team here, what is our interest? Our interest is to support the Ministry of Education and its close partners in achieving equitable education for all in Egypt. That's your mission as well, and we're here to support you. And what this evidence seminar is about helping us can this help guide us in those very complex policy? For us, we're policy advice. For you, it's policy make, right? So how do we do this? And at the heart of a paradox, there's a sense of you have to move forward, as you've said, Dr. Daher, about in relation to building classrooms, getting teachers in, creating a learning environment. Often these are high-cost inputs. We work in a policy environment, and it's the Ministry of Finance who holds the purse strings, and they are interested in your inputs. And these are and then we base a lot of what we're doing in relation to designing those or setting those inputs on quite big assumptions, that we think maybe that it's a good teacher-pupil ratio is 1:30, a good classroom size is whatever, maybe this size or half the size of this, that actually, in the modern era, it's good to have an interactive device at the front of the screen. Previously, it was obviously a blackboard or a whiteboard. And these seem to me sensible, meaningful decisions that you have to make to be able to budget, to plan. But they are, as we think about education, and certainly as we listen to the evidence about what makes a difference on learning, quite separate to the evidence that you have. But we are in a space where sorry, there's a fly running around here. We're in a space where actually the Ministry of Education has to go to the Ministry of Finance and say, this is what I need. And the Ministry of Finance thinks in terms of those inputs, right? And we've been just really grappling with this in UNICEF in terms of how we can better support the Ministry of Education to help clarify its own asks. But that's quite divorced from learning. And then what we get is some really coherent insights, Dr. Andreas, around evidence, around learning, and obviously what it provides is a really rich understanding of actually, can we open up, as it were, a bit of the black box of learning, you know, the relationship between teacher, technology, and when I say technology in this context, I can be very broad. It's anything from a whiteboard to a smart whiteboard to an iPad to access to the internet. But the relation between the teacher, the technology, the learner, and that's opening that out. And the paradox here is, how do you actually bring those two things together? On the one hand, systems have to be built based on assumptions that are often not hugely tied to actually, is a 30-to-1 teacher-pupil ratio actually connected to high-quality learning? I think that's many decades, and this is canonized in UNESCO formal documents around what are good standards of an education system that may run from decades ago that will inform us and become the norms. And then I think if we think about technology, I think we mostly think in that way that, yes, actually, we would expect modern technology to be part of that modern classroom. That connectivity is a natural part of contemporary learning. That having devices in the way that we have all just demonstrated, people using their devices to support their learning. I've got my notes here myself. The use of a microphone, the use of the projector, the use of aircon, right? That's actually part of our ability to be productive in this hot environment. There's so much, these are the things that we would rightly assume are sensible in a classroom. But rightly assumed does not mean that learning happens. And so you have all of those decisions. And then, on the other hand, you want to be able to think really sharply around what actually makes a difference on learning. And I maybe just stop there with the paradox. And I know we want to get to questions, so maybe, but just for me, that's a really a really tough nut to crack, right? We want to, do we need to hit it both at once? We create the learning environment based on assumptions that we hope is going to lead to learning, and then work really hard to get all of the evidence that we can get to support those teachers and learners with the technology to do the most with it. Do we do them both together? I guess I'm leaning towards that. That's what you've got to do. And how can we do that in any environment? Egypt is a middle-income country. There's a very constrained environment in terms of education expenditure. How do we maximize that, I think, is the core here. Maybe if there's another round, I'll talk about some of the things that UNICEF are doing, but for me, that's one of the big reflections that I'd want to share at this moment.
Have any reflections or thoughts on the discussion so far, would be great actually to share those with us.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed. And it's quite interesting to see a very diversified panel, because we have the academia perspective, we have the policymaker and the government perspective, we have the international development perspective, and we have the private sector perspective. So it's quite a holistic approach to a topic such as education. And allow me to draw a little bit from what Andy, if you may allow me to say Andy, thank you. You were saying that procuring and buying technology on its own is not enough. And I 100% believe in what you're saying. Because the intention here, if you're just buying technology, is you want to become part of using the buzzword of EdTech. But if your intention is to elevate the learning experience for students, then your approach would be completely holistic. You wouldn't just buy a technology, you would incorporate other pillars as well, such as curriculum development, such as teacher training and readiness. And technology on its own would provide you with a more personalized experience. It would allow for gamified curriculum. It would allow for a scorecard to be shared with the student and the parents to be able to track the development of their child holistically, not just on an academia level. And if I draw on what Dr. Ahmed Doher, who I had the privilege to work with back in 2019, on what he said in terms of Egypt, it is a huge scale. We've got more than 25 million students, and to be able to cater to all of them just through the government, just through policy making, this is quite challenging. In fact, it's quite limiting for the government to be able to do this. And this is where the concept of effective partnerships, and this is where the concept of having a holistic panel or a holistic partnership, where the international development, they come in with the aids that they have and the expertise they have. And the policy-making aspect comes in with driving decisions. And academia comes in with their expertise and the research and the knowledge that they have. And the private sector coming in to serve the agile approach that the government is looking for. So this is my comment. Those are my 2 cents for now. But thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. So we can start the discussion now by having questions to our distinguished panelists and get their ideas and thoughts and remarks on those. And I'll be starting with Dr. Daher. So technology integration is mentioned as one of the key components in Egypt's education reform strategy. What role does educational technology play in the reform strategy? Like in which goals does it help to achieve? And what are some of the steps that have already been taken towards integrating it into the education system in Egypt?
Well, just to set the cornerstones of the concept, I need just to mention that we are talking with students in Generation Alpha and Generation Z. So there's like a very specific and particular mindset related to those kids, that they are in the digital world. They are in their cloud. We are the migrants. So the way of the communication need to be adapted in a way that we teach in the right way. And I'm talking about the mainstream because there is exceptions in the marginalized communities and the most poor and underprivileged communities, which represent a direction that we are taking with different policies. So I'll use my slides up there. Thanks that we have it here. The numbers in Egypt, we need to define the problem. What's the problem? Because it's like a very huge problem accumulated over years with different policies being tackled. And this is the current result that we have right now. We are 25 million students with a 60,000 school and a 1.6 million teacher. The numbers here are increasing actually, while the teachers are decreasing. And if you asked any of the students right now in high school, what's your job? Do you like to be a teacher? The answer is no, because teaching is not a good example of a job. So there is a problem here in one of the cornerstones in the education process, which is the teachers. And another one is the mass number, the increasing population. It's giving us a very, it's giving us a very pressuring problem. And here are the 2 classical slides that I always like to share and repeating in every talks. Those our education system. In the picture with the animals, we are measuring the skills and the performance of the students according to a static and very unfair exam, which is asking the fish to climb the tree, and if it fails, well, you need more. You need private tutoring. You need to pass it, which creates the buying the certificate, not trying to learn. And the other one is, okay, we have an industrial revolution, and we need a doctor, an engineer, and happily that we have here a multidisciplinary approach with Dr. Samer. He's have different disciplines in engineering and in economy, which is the normal way. But now our school system and the education system is trying to depriving the student from the creativity and intelligence and having like a factory line. And the challenge that we have here in Egypt is similar to different parts, but specifically in Egypt, we have a limited access to quality education and then overcrowded classrooms and a shortage of teachers. I'll be quick because I'm not going to do the presentation, but to know that those problems are always pressuring problems. We need to build more schools. We need to hire more teachers. We need to enhance the quality of the teaching process inside the classroom. We need to try, is it a teacher-centric or a student-centric approach? There are fancy things about the fly again. We're fancy about the ideas of having different policies in the teaching policies and trying to enhance and try to train the teachers, try to do it. But in practice, it's not there. In practice, it's about the pressuring time because the salary of the teachers are weak and they are trying to pass the day. And what is it by enforcing the process? It might be. It might be like a policy of trying to have like a very disciplined approach of supervising the teacher. But what happens through the past 6-7 years, it's not there. Maybe it affects like 15% of the ecosystem, but only the mass it relies on the private tutoring and the things up. So what's the objectives here? The objectives is only to have an innovative learning space. This was the core objective of the transformation that began in 2017 in the Ministry of Education and the Egyptian government. Innovative learning space to allow virtual and physical and provide access and quality education with equality to all students. Because in Egypt, education is for free. And it was till the end of the grade 9, but according to the constitution, it's to the end of grade 12. So this is the basic education is for free. And we have in this arena 22 million students in the government education and only 3 million in the private sector part. We need to provide knowledge and tools for teachers and parents to develop skills. So to keep it very short, we have set like a digital transformation strategy and to find, is it right to use technology to fill in the gaps that are happening here? Yes, we find that technology, it is a very important aspect of how to fill in the space that in the teacher problem part in terms of the quality of the teaching and in terms of the there is no teachers in a certain subject. And in the population, for example, it's a crowded classroom. So could we use hybrid education? Could we use technology of trying to give the access to the students? When we started the innovation 2017, it was very critical that, well, remember the 2 slides of the 2 pictures? We need to revamp the education system. We started with the outcomes, what we would like the student to be in after in 2030, in the new 21st century skills arena. So we change all the curriculum. We have like a new blueprint for the curriculum framework. And this started from KG1 till grade 3 at 2018. Right now we are 2018. So what happened, there is a new curriculum, a new content with the digital assistance. There is no digital impact, there is no digital interference in the content, no devices, the students don't use any type of technology until grade 4. So after that, at grade 4, we introduced at 2019 for the high school, because they are jumping into the job market, we introduced technology. Well, and remember the animals the exam, we changed how we measure the outcomes. Does it by the memorizing or the skills of retention? No, by understanding. We have like a new question banks, a new assessment framework in order to measure the learning outcomes, not to allow the student to memorize, but to understand. Do you understand? Define the photosynthesis process. It is a very simple question, which is belong to the past era. But right now, where does oxygen come from? Where can you find a way that we can create oxygen? So if you understand the photosynthesis process, then I'll state it in an answer. So what happened in grade 10, 11, and 12, we changed this mindset. In order to help them to learn from different content, not to stick to a book that it is like, this is the fixed one that you can memorize and just fill it in the exam. This is not the agreement with the student. We defined a new agreement. We give you a lot of resources. So inheriting from what we have on the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, we asked all the publishers at that time to tailor the content to the learning outcomes, and we avail this on a platform for which is the learning management system that have a content from 5 publishers on the same learning outcome from K to 12. So it was like that in 2019. And we started delivering the e-exams for the students to use the tablet. We distributed tablet. And yes, we're aware about the problem. Is it right to distribute the tablet? And it's like a debate, actually. And it's still an ongoing debate. Is it right to have for all the students? Remember, it's for free, the education for free. You could not leave any children behind. So we distributed for all the graders from grade 10, all of them at that time, a device. And we equipped this device with a SIM card for free in order to access the content available on the ecosystem for free and allow the students, when they go at the exam in the midterm and the finals, to use the device in order to have the exam. And we used this, and we did this for consecutive like 5 years with more than 1 billion exam on the engines that we have. And at the first time there were problems, a lot of problems. We solved the problems. Right now we are doing for grade 10 and grade 11, all the exams are in electronic form using the devices. This means that the learning space needs to be renovated. We did it, actually. We have 2,500 schools, 2,500 schools for the graders 10, 11, and 12. So we equipped all the schools with a Wi-Fi classrooms, and we put a server inside in each school and connected all the classrooms with a fiber connection to our data centers where they can utilize the content that we avail for them inside the classroom, and for the strategy that we have for the ICT that access anywhere, anytime, and using anywhere. So for the graders 10, 11, and 12, they have devices. They can access when they are at home. They have a SIM card. They can access the content for free. And this is like the samples of the places. So if you are in a classroom, there is a lot of application being delivered. And you can see the screen in the classroom application part. There is a screen inside that. This is an active panel. This is the cornerstone of the supervising the teaching process. So it turned the classroom into a innovative learning space, where this is connected to the learning management system, connected to the content, connected to the examination platform. So this panel, you can put it anywhere. I can put it here, then this is a classroom that could enable the teacher to use the content, a curated content, a highly quality content in order to deliver. And coming up to the idea of one of the things Andreas just showed in the presentation, that there is a structured way of presenting the lesson, like a lesson plan so this is what we did at 2019. Well, not all what I am saying is very good in the practice, but it faces a lot of problem. We have like a 10% usage at that time in 2019. It started, we're trying to evangelize more and try to push, because again, the cornerstone of the education process is the people. Either a teacher, a parent, or a student. It's all about the people. Transformation is people, process, technology, and the best practice. But we figured out that if I am a teacher, there are 4 things that are happening inside the teaching classroom. It's skills, knowledge, attitude, and best practice. So I am, as a teacher, I'm trying to share the knowledge. Right now, knowledge is not a problem. So if it's easy just to strip the knowledge away from and try to deliver it in using technology. Still, skills, it's a debate that we can equip the skills through the technology, channels for the students, but still we need a social learning part. Try to give the skills and the attitude and the best practice to the students. Then the screen in this part is one of the important things. What we distributed is a 1.8 million devices. And right now, grade 10, 11, 12, they have the devices. So here's the platform that we have. Devices in the hand of the students and a connectivity for them. And we have a platforms. Then it's like an innovative arena of trying to push more services and more learning style related applications. So we are right now in 2019. We are hit by COVID in the next year. That it happened that we turned the switch to all the digital. We closed the schools. What happened that we didn't have any problem with the grade 10, 11, and 12, and we did exam at home in order just to push them in the right way. And it's one of the evidence that's being published in different arena in UNESCO, in Harvard, about that we succeeded of just moving the COVID by using this infrastructure. Still, there is a very major problem. What about the others? And what about the poor people who don't have the device access? It was a very, this is the problem of how to use technology in the smart way. So we switched into the TV satellite because it's like a pervasive technology, and every home, even a poor home, they have an access to the TV set. So what we did is trying to deliver the content using the TV satellite channels. Right now we have like 3 channels, one for primary and mid school and high school. We broadcast a highly quality episodes of TV episodes that are tailored and being examined in a way of the retention of the students, because right now, if you are aware by the studies, the graders from grade 7 to 12, the retention is 20 minutes. They can just sit like 20 minutes. But for the alpha, the primary, it's 8 seconds. So we switch the things up of designing the content to, if you are not able of getting his attention in the 8 seconds, he will just scroll it away. It's like a TikTok style, a social media style. So we introduced what's called Netflix for education, which is called Madrasatna Plus. It's an app. It's an on-demand app that we have all the videos, all the content are in your app. And surprisingly, we found that we have like a 5 million subscriber and 2 million concurrent users. They are hyping in the time of the revision and exam. And we added entertainment as well and games as well. Let me just push it by. Here's the classroom. We have a 36,000 classroom equipped with the panel. Connected to all the ecosystem that we have. The teacher can use inside the classroom, we can use the video conferencing and just like here. The teacher in one place could just broadcast a teaching experience to others that don't have the right one. Or we can use the TV channels to broadcast TV episodes inside this classroom. Imagine that we in a school, we don't have a science teacher, and there is a problem with the science teacher. And what happened here, we got a facilitator inside the classroom, and he can play back the science episodes. And I'll show this sample that we did in a research in Alexandria. Those are the application that we have from a student perspective. The screen of the mobile, it's for the Madrasatna Plus. And we have different activities, streaming activities, or an on-demand activities, or quizzes inside this experience. And any interaction between the student and the technology is being recorded for behavior analysis in order to predict the direction and the adaptive learning approach. for the teacher as well. We distributed devices for the teacher, for the graders 10, 11, and 12, in order to equip them with the new technologies, training them, and we have like a learning and development platform in order to track their usage. Let me jump. This is more of technical things up. And those are the classrooms, because we have like a head center that we can see all the 36,000 classroom to monitor them at the exam, doing the proctoring for the exam as well. This is a glimpse of the products that we have. We have the Plus application. It is the Netflix for education, that we have more than 7,000 episodes are displayed and on demand, and we are keeping, because we have like a drama studios and studios for delivering the content dedicated for the Ministry of Education. We have the channels 1, 2, and 3 producing a content. Let me just jump, and cartoon as well. We develop cartoon, we develop games. We encourage, and actually we work with private sector. And it is one of the main policies that is very interesting here, to see that the way that we think that things will rooted and prevail is to work with more private ecosystem and more stakeholders. Those are our partner Discovery, Nahdat Masr, Britannica, Designmate, Slah Tilmiz. And we have this co-pilot. It's the first Arabic a co-pilot. It's Fahim. It's an AI tutoring that we launched last year, and it is specified in history for grade 10, 11, 12. So it could, because I know you, when you log in, then Ahmed, he's in grade 10, he's doing good in math, but he's bad in history. So it could communicate with this co-pilot. And 5 seconds is like a game. It's let's see, I have a video here, I think. Not the pop one. This is the example. It is in a village in Alexandria. This is how could we utilize the technology in a way of a very simple way. This is a screen. This is a grade 4. They have a math session, and what's on the side of the screen, it's the episode coming from Madrasatna. We are very keen about the quality of the teachers and the content itself, and see how they are interact. She's a facilitator right now. I see. No. Press play. عايز play. لا it's a sample. Okay. Because it's from Google. No, it won't play. Okay, just seeing here that, it's very simple that you can imagine that if when this video is trying that she's a facilitator, and the student interact actually right away with the teacher inside the recorded part. And the effectiveness in this part was very effective when measured about the performance of students. They really understand, they're really performing. They're in the exams. When we measure this, it bypassed the others, because we start using this in 25% of the schools. This means that we can fill in the problems about the learning space, the overpopulation, the access, because we have like a very centralized delivery of the software and the content and the teaching experience. Yeah. I can keep. It's okay. ممكن يعني مشي بقى شوية. That's okay. It's okay. I think that's fine. Yeah.
Dr. Ahmed, thank you so much. This was really impressive, showing us all these efforts towards like building this major infrastructure in the education system in Egypt. I think this is super useful, and hopefully actually we'll have the time to discuss together actually the possibility of evaluating the impact of this on the learning outcomes. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Shakira. Based on Dr. Ahmed's presentation, where do you see a promise in EdTech achieving the goals mentioned by the Ministry of Education and Technical Education? And from your experience working in the education sector, or education research in general, what are some of the best buys that can be made to improve the education system in Egypt?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Daher, for giving those insights around the investment in digital learning in Egypt. I think, Dr. Ahmed, actually, you as a facilitator, just pointed to one of the very first things that we should be working on in terms of the promise of EdTech, and that is actually, let's use this data that there is technology across the Egyptian education system, and we should be able to find out, Andy pointed to this, one of the incredible things about technology is it could give you some insights of what's happening in the classroom at a governorate level or at a national level. That is actually otherwise quite expensive to get. And traditionally, you need your supervisor in an idara or in a governorate to visit a school to find out what's happening in the classroom. So let's get the fact that we've got technology in so many classrooms and find out what's going on. I think even with probably quite modest data, like usage data, those panels, those smart screens you were referring to, are they being turned on regularly? Could tell us something about the use of technology. I think that here in Egypt right now, that feels like an amazing opportunity. And UNICEF would love to work on that with you, with the ministry, and explore ways in which we can unlock data to understand what's happening with the use of that technology, and then to understand whether that's making an impact on learning. The second thing is, how do we bridge a couple of things? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We've got a situation, and there is continuing ambition. I think I'm right in saying, in one of the recent speeches by the president, there's an ambition to connect every school by 2030 to the internet. There is continuous ambition by this government, by the ministry, to invest in digital education. So what the opportunity really is about creating the climate through which maybe a tinkering culture, maybe that's the phrase, but a culture where teachers, parents and students, and Deputy Minister, you talked about the importance of people. So now really empowering those people, teachers, students, parents, I think at the core, but also actually the administrators, the supervisors and others who have such a critical role. How do we genuinely empower them now to play around with this technology, to think about their pedagogy, and then coupled with this, given that we're in a seminar talking about evidence, how do we create some maybe big learning agendas that we can implement and evaluate, and learning agendas could be on the three that Andy presented, better information to parents about the value of education, particularly that could be super useful for those in those communities where dropout is higher, particularly at preparatory and high school. How do we embed teaching at the right level type processes, but in a kind of tinkering plus technology culture, and how do we embed structured pedagogy? That feels like a massive second opportunity that really kind of how do we, and in that, empowering students, parents and teachers is not, if you take the teacher part, it's not going to be just about training teachers. It's going to be about permissions. We know that head teachers and supervisors are often gatekeepers to what teachers are allowed to do in the classroom. It's about status, it's about talking up teachers and about saying, we trust you to make mistakes, we trust you to use this technology in ways that we might not know. I think that too, and then couple that with research agenda, and then you wanted me to talk about, so these I think are some great opportunities that we really should go for. We've got some evidence of what works, the great buys, we've got a context of technology, we've got a continuing ambition of the government to invest in technology. Let's bring that stuff together with some great evidence. And then you wanted me to talk a bit about some kind of international experiences. You know, my career is kind of in two halves. My first half of the career was in the UK, working for the UK education system as a civil servant within the Department of Education. The second half is with UNICEF internationally. And one of the things that's super interesting in the UK, and then I was lucky enough to work in a time where the UK education, there was a lot of investment. It was in the early 2000s to 2010. And there were two big investments made. One was in technology. A screen was put in a smart screen was put in every classroom. Every single teacher was taught the basics of how to use that technology. But it was ultimately a bet on the future. It goes back to my paradox. They didn't know that this was going to improve learning, but it was a bet on the future. And in the end, actually, there were assessments made. There's kind of no impact of learning on that investment. But what did it do? It was coupled with political prioritization of education, which came alongside talking up the teaching profession and saying, look, we're spending on teachers. It brought back a kind of flight from the private sector to the public sector, because people saw that the private sector was investing in technology. Now the public sector is investing in technology. We don't need to spend however many thousands of pounds to, you know, there were these factors which are super interesting and nothing to do really with learning, but they are about the value of public education. But ultimately, we don't think in the timelines that we did the evaluation that made any impact on learning. At the same time, we were doing structured pedagogy interventions, and that was making a difference. So, you know, this is but I don't think anyone regrets in the British education system that investment in digital technology. And I think there's many thousands, tens of thousands of teachers who are now 15, 20, 25 years on using that technology in ways that we can't imagine, and, you know, and being able to measure the impact of that technology is quite difficult. So that's kind of one interesting example that often investment in technology is a bit of a punt on the future, right? It's not, I think the second thing, maybe just to talk a couple of things about a few UNICEF things. One is, I think, a kind of overarching theme that I think around technology use to support learning is careful implementation of that. And one of the things that we're really interested in is, and excited about here in Egypt, and it's something that Egypt is part of in many different, well, actually, I think 5 or 6 countries around the world. It's something that we've talked about, is that we've got a project called Learning Pioneers here in Egypt. And what it's genuinely about is about thinking deeply about the questions that have been raised here, about what is the learning challenge, what is the challenge that the system faces, and are there some game-changing technologies that can accelerate that? Egypt has been selected, as I said, of one of 5 or maybe 6 countries globally as kind of part of a UNICEF innovation project, and there's partners, of course, the Ministry of Education, but a few other development partners and technology partners to genuinely kind of sandbox ideas around what could be, and then test them, thoroughly test them. Like, is it a single product that we could plug into a teaching the right level, and let's test it and push it forward. You know, look out for that in July. We hope to have a kind of kickoff webinar on that. That's one. The second is thinking about equity. We're here in Egypt at the time of COVID, we launched, particularly for refugee and migrant communities, the Learning Passport. This is a global product that UNICEF has in partnership with Microsoft. And we've developed that a little bit further and testing it in a very small number of Egyptian community schools about the offline learning passport. And this idea that in certain contexts where there may be actually some internet, but the internet is not reliable enough currently. And actually, for me, it's not about the technology. UNICEF is bringing this technology to bring ideas, not necessarily bringing this technology to be the technology solution for the government. It could be, if everyone believes it's the right one. But what it is about, can we put that technology in a few community schools across Egypt? And we've started to, and we're talking about a couple of dozen at the moment. So it's a box, it's you know, you can put whatever content you want on it, but what we're wrapping around it is a really intensive training program for teachers. Now, and what can we do around that? And we want to build an evidence program around that. These are just a few examples that I think are worth highlighting.
Thank you so much. I'll move now to Ms. Gilgil, Hind Gilgil. Can you share your experience working in the area of education in general on how EdTech platforms have impacted students' learning, particularly in terms of accelerating the goals of Egypt's education reform strategy? In other words, like, you know, to what extent the amazing effort of the ministry that Dr. Daher just showed has been translated into, like, you know, better outcomes, learning outcomes for the pupils and children.
Okay. Now, allow me to share a couple of stories. One as a teacher inside a classroom, and one as an educator who was responsible for the learning part on an EdTech platform. Now, when I was responsible for the learning component for an EdTech platform, because I was lucky enough and I was exposed to the graduate profile that the Minister of Education wanted to have by 2030 for the students graduating from Education 2.0. So skills and life skills such as creativity, such as decision-making, such as resilience, those were all brought to life within the learning experience for students on that specific EdTech platform. So instead of the lesson saying, this is an explanation lesson, and it just speaks about photosynthesis process, for example, it was more of, yes, that's the learning outcome, understanding how the photosynthesis process works, but also the skills that this lesson would be hammering on is creativity, is collaboration, is decision-making. And then that takes us to another layer of the planning of the lesson. What are the tools that are used for those students, and what are the lesson plans that the teacher are using to be able to deliver those lessons that would hammer on the learning outcome and at the same time would hammer on those skills. And this was applied across English, history, physics, chemistry, biology. And this was also applied from primary 3, because this is what we were serving back at this point in time, up to primary 8. So being exposed to what the ministry wanted to do and the vision has allowed one EdTech platform to be agile enough to cater and to accelerate the process. Now, what I want to mention is that this platform, it's got more than 10 million students that has accessibility to it. So I can't provide more numbers in terms of how many have graduated, but what I can tell you is that parents, they came back to us and they said, we want to see a specific scorecard that measures not how good my son is with chemistry, but how good is he with presenting his ideas, with public speaking, with collaborating with his peers. So they moved away from the academia, because this is something that would be achievable anyway, and they moved towards the life skills and the citizenship education, which was introduced by UNICEF, and it was implemented by the Ministry of Education after adding a couple of further skills. So this is the first story. The second story, as a teacher, I was working for one of the top-tier schools in Egypt, and we were seeing great declining in the math scores for specifically grade 4. So what we've done, like any typical classroom, is we've decided to split the students to high abilities, middle abilities, and low abilities. And then each one of those abilities were taken into a different classroom, and they were catered for in the way that they prefer to be taught. Guess what? The scores actually went even lower and lower. One, because they were being labeled as low ability and high ability, and middle ability, of course, so this was discriminating on its own. Two, you were taking away the privilege of the low ability to be around the high performers, which automatically would elevate their math ability. So scrap this for term 2. Term 3, this is when technology was introduced. And what happened is the introduction of a very, very simple platform that provides revision questions for math and equations, mathematical equations. But the difference was that they linked correct answers to donating an ounce of rice to Ahmed, who lives in Ghana. And by this happening, it motivated students to be able to hit the correct answer, because now they realize they're responsible for someone else rather than themselves. It's a very simple use of technology. But guess what? The math scores towards the end of the year, it raised up to 78%. And that was great progress. And that was a very, very minor intervention, nothing big. So this is how technology, very minor intervention, it's not about introducing technology because, again, it's a buzzword. It's about, it's a mean to an end, which is elevate your math scores, become a better student, collaborate, and impact other people's lives as well. So it's technology with purpose. So I'll just, I think those are two good examples. I have more examples to share from real life examples, from real life scenarios, but I'll just stop here.
I'm afraid we are at the time. I would like to thank you so much. This is very meaningful examples. If I'm going to wrap up and comment very quickly actually on your interventions, I've learned a lot myself, and I believe the audience as well. On your examples, for example, this is amazing because it teaches us that what works abroad might not work here, and maybe we have different contexts. And we need to understand what exactly and why exactly certain things are working a certain way and are not working in a different way. Teaching at the right level is something that has proven to be working quite well. So we need to learn from you. We'll be discussing more about your experiences to see actually what was the case here. Is it something for Egypt? And can we implement it differently? This kind of stuff. But generally speaking, I believe actually there's a lot to learn from together. On the Ministry of Education and the discussions, the presentation by Dr. Daher and the comments by Mr. Shakira, I believe this is amazing. I haven't myself been aware of all these investments in this direction, and I believe it's important to work jointly together on trying to evaluate the impact of these technologies on the learning outcomes of the children, but not only that, also their social behavior, their integration in the society, particularly those who are from distant regions. I believe this is kind of leveling off, kind of a technology that could reduce inequality across different regions, for example, and help with tackling the challenges that we have discussed earlier in the discussion. I can thank
Ahmed,
you.
I do have a proposition for in this specific part. We're asking for the partnership. We are next month, we are opening an innovation lab headed by the Ministry of Microsoft and UNESCO for EdTech. And we are asking if we can collaborate. Yes, we can collaborate in this part in terms of research, in terms of examining the right policy. We are engaging more of the education technology private sector. So I think this is a very good approach of just doing this work together.
This sounds great. I'll be more than glad actually to talk more about this and figure out the possibilities. Let me ask the audience to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. Q&A? Perfect. So we open the door for Q&A. If anyone has a question or comment, please feel free. Helena.
Thank you so much for the distinguished speakers for an excellent panel discussion, and Dr. Andreas for an amazing presentation. My question is on the teacher salaries. Dr. Daher, you've mentioned at the beginning of your word is that we're still having an issue with the teacher salaries. But now, since we are moving for digital transformation, we're also adding a lot to the plates of the teachers. And we know that this remains an issue from many research and analyses from the public expenditure review. So my question is also, what is the plans for the ministry to address this issue, and how are you planning to resolve it? And I'm not implying that we should stop with the digital transformation, but rather maybe this is where research and evidence can help us, because we know that we are operating within limited fiscal space of the government. So also showing what works, showing the return on investment on specific digital tools that we are pushing and we are scaling up. Maybe this would help when the Ministry of Education would request Ministry of Finance for larger. So just maybe to get your thoughts. And the second question is on the inclusive education. For children with disabilities also, how or what are the efforts for the ministry to make sure that we are not also leaving the children with disabilities behind? Thank you.
Do we have the strategy being published in something about the strategy that we have? Did we? The GPE, the strategy of the ECP, the sector plan.
Oh, yes,
is
yes,
it published?
it's published,
It's
yes,
published.
it's
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that this is first the teacher theory is not the ministry only the ministry direction. But there is an effort of just raising the bar high for the minimum wage to be, and is effective next month. It's doubled actually. The low bar is doubled to be from 3,000 to 6,000, which is already not enough. But there is more incentives we are trying to do. In terms that we have an initiative called Ana al-Muallim. It's like an initiative of trying to utilize the mass of the number, the million number, trying to give them more incentives against their performance. So it's like a selective approach. We're trying, it's not only about the money, it's about different aspects we're trying to provide, like the healthcare, the stuff. And the most important part is about the proper and smart utilization. It's been accounted in the strategy about how to use effectively the teaching part. The point is, in terms of salary, it's like always a race of trying. And again, you remember what I called about the teaching job. To be a teacher is not a welcomed part. When you are a student or a kid, I want to go to teaching unless you are trying to tackle the private tutoring, which will drive you a lot of money. And you saw the famous picture about the teacher entering this hall and the arena, the basketball arena, and trying to have this part, which is something very important to see. What's the problem here? Is it from the teacher, the students, the parents, the ministry? We're trying to do our best. All of us trying to do the best. So I think that it needs to come from a research approach. What's the best practice of tackling? What's the best communication tool to talk to the parents? From our side, we are open just to enforce those policies, because it's like a community education. It's not a ministry job. It's all the people job, because what the school is doing in the school, there is need to be complemented by the parents at house. Right now, we can see that some parents are trying to only pay money, and this is only our job. Leave the job for others just to do. And there is something wrong. They actually put all the problem upon the school or the system or the ecosystem. So it's a shareable job. From our side, using the technology, technology is not replacing the teacher at all. Well, it is very important to give the teacher the right tools and the right processes in order to excel in his teaching. And when he excel in doing that, doing in the right quality, this will spare his time in the right way, and will affect, because not all the teachers are seeking for money. There are some people that like being a teacher. And right now we opened up for recruiting more teachers. We have like right now 60,000 teachers coming to be recruited, just to fill in the gap of having this vacancy of the teachers. The complete answer about the policies and how can you help that, it's stated in our strategy that's being published maybe like a couple of weeks ago or something. Yeah, which is called the Education Sector Plan. Because the Education Sector Plan, it's a work that's being done over 3 years, preceded by an analysis, a rough analysis for 1 year being done. It is a very comprehensive analysis that this sector analysis examined the root cause of the problems that are arising around the education system. So the ESP, the Education Sector Plan, is an effort that trying to address those problems and address those and the solutions for those challenges.
One more time, I would like to thank you so much for making it to today's event. It has been very informative and useful panel discussion and presentation by Andy, who just had to leave. Thank you so much, and we hope to continue our discussions on important topics related to development in Egypt. Thank you.